Welcome to DogeLog Index 8. This is the series where I share the business and development process of taking a project I started as a joke called DogeHouse and turning it into a billion-dollar unicorn company that is going to the moon. For a little bit now, when starting a startup, the best place to go has been Y Combinator and also therapy. It's an accelerator with a very good track record, and when you have YC or YC alum in your bio, you instantly earn the respect with anyone wearing Allbirds or a Patagonia vest, which can be very valuable. Given that I'm not an ex-Googler, an ex-Facebooker, or an ex-millionaire, my bio has been looking quite weak lately. I know I've had a pretty rough life, so for a hot minute I thought becoming a YC alum would be the solution. And for a while now, I've been a low-key YC sexual anyway. This is something that affects a lot of young individuals. If you're subconscious about it, you can treat it by reducing your Hacker News intake and avoiding your friends that went through YC and now own a yacht. Long story short, I applied to YC with DogeHouse, and this week I received the email officially rejecting me. They don't give any personal feedback, but if I were to pretend to be a YC reviewer, I would reject DogeHouse for 3 reasons. First, it has a solo founder, and startups are more likely to succeed with co-founders. Secondly, the idea of DogeHouse is what Paul Graham would consider a derivative idea, which is one of the 18 mistakes that kills startups. Third, I'm a cat person and I don't like Doges. Now, those of you that have been following along with the Doge log know that this doesn't really change anything except for my self-esteem, because 2 weeks ago I decided that I'm not going to raise any money for the project. That way I could rage quit it whenever I wanted. But I still wanted to share an update because heck, Benoit got rejected again and he needed some kind of explanation for why his bio is lacking so many keywords. Moving on to the oopsie of the week, I have a very basic avatar URL exploit to share with you that's kind of related to social logins. A lot of people have asked why you can only log into DogeHouse using social logins like GitHub and Twitter and not username and password. And I did this for 2 reasons. Number 1 is for spam protection. You can only create so many GitHub accounts until their spam system starts to block you, and so therefore you can only create so many DogeHouse accounts. Number 2, I wanted avatars, and all the OAuth providers give you avatars, and they also have reporting systems in place that make sure people don't put naked bodies as their profile images. I'm going to eventually set up my own system, but it saves me time to use social logins for now so I can work on other features, and I can come back, set up my own login system later and do all that fun stuff with spam protection. Now, of course, people want to be able to change their avatars, so I made a compromise and let them change the URL to where they want their avatar to come from. I had a regular expression on it so people could only set URLs from Twitter, GitHub, and Discord, because if you let any URL being set, bad things can happen, and I'm not just talking about inappropriate images. Dun dun dun. We've been making a lot of changes to the API, and somewhere along the way, the validation to check the URLs stopped being applied. And the test checking to make sure you can't pass in invalid URLs disappeared. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. This resulted in somebody setting their profile image to a URL on a server they owned. So whenever I joined a room, for example, with them, my browser would make a request to their server to get their avatar. The bad part is their server was logging the IP address of every request that came in. So all they needed to do was join a room, and then all the people's computers in that room would make a request to their server, and he would then have the IP of everyone in the room, which is not good. I don't think they had malicious intent. They said they deleted the entire list of IPs once it got patched, but the moral of the story is, all the images that you load on your website, you should either be hosting, proxying, or have a whitelist of accepted URLs that you know are legit. I'm just hoping the next oopsie of the week, we get hacked in a more elegant manner. I want to now respond to some comments regarding IP bans. One consideration is that most IP addresses are dynamic nowadays, especially on mobile devices. An IP ban shouldn't last more than a day or so, otherwise other users might get the ban when IPs rotate and wouldn't know why. Currently, we don't do any IP bans on a site-wide level, and I don't have any plans to do so. A room creator can IP ban somebody, and it will last the duration of the room and is only scoped to that room. So I think the situation is going to be pretty rare where someone's IP changes that got IP banned, and then another person happens to get that IP and they want to join the same room that the other person got banned in. I think the situation that's going to come up a lot more is if I'm sharing IPs with somebody in the entire building and somebody gets IP banned from that room, then everyone in the building can't join the room. I don't know how often this is going to happen in practice, so I'm curious to see. Maybe we should just not have IP bans for that reason. But at the end of the day, room creators get the choice. they can choose to IP ban people, or they could do regular bans. Hopefully you don't even have to ban people from your room, but this is the internet, so I think one of the best options for uniquely identifying people is to require a phone number. I'm not going to add this right now because 1, I just hate giving up my phone number, and 2, it's expensive actually programmatically sending texts. So I'm going to wait until the website actually makes some money and then possibly add it. I saw several comments recommending I use some sort of hardware identifier or MAC address instead of an IP, but as far as I'm aware, you can't get that sort of thing using JavaScript in a browser. If you can, let me know. I couldn't find anything on it. But what I am going to try is fingerprinting browsers. It's a technique where you generate a unique ID based on the attributes of somebody's browser, and something that doesn't change when you open up new tabs in incognito or when you clear cookies. I'm going to be using a combination of that and IP bans for now, and we'll see how well they work in practice. If it turns out to be super ineffective or doing too much collateral damage, I can always take them out later. Someone recommended that instead of storing raw IP addresses to do IP bans, you hash the IP and store that to protect privacy, and I quite like the sound of that. So instead of storing an IP like 127.0.0.1, I would put it through a hashing function, and that would spit out just a garbled string, and the garbled string is what I would store. But there's only like 4 billion IP addresses, so you can easily brute force the IP address if you have the hashed version. To combat this, I'm going to be using the HMAC hash, which you can give it a secret. And so now it's virtually impossible to brute force the IP if you just have the hashed IP. You would need the hashed IP plus the secret. So hopefully I don't expose both of those things. I added the first shadow feature to be able to turn off your whispers. And whispers are just like direct messages for rooms. And what makes this shadow is if I send you a whisper, it looks like the whisper gets sent on my side, but on your side, if you have whispers off, you just won't see the message. I don't know if this actually should be a shadow feature because there could be legitimate people trying to whisper you that think you're just ignoring them, but there has been a situation where people were sending sexist whispers to somebody, so I did want to start this off being a shadow feature just to see if this totally stops the problem for that person. I did go ahead and also add follower only mode to chat, which allows room creators, mods, speakers, and listeners who have followed the room creator for at least 30 minutes to talk and chat. This has been very effective so far. Spammers have come into rooms blasting messages, and the room creator just flips on follower only mode and the room is instantly secure. I'm curious to see if anyone will end up waiting the 30 minutes, and maybe I should increase the threshold, or I might just make it like a customizable value that the room creator can set. But that's it for this Doge log. I'm currently deep in the weeds of getting room recordings to work. It's a little bit more of a rabbit hole than I first anticipated, but I should have some stuff for the next Doge log, so stay tuned for that.